Right, good morning everybody. Just going to wait for some numbers to increase. A very warm welcome to everybody who is attending. This is the first time I'm actually running one of these, so do bear with me. Fingers crossed all goes smoothly. For those who don't know me, my name is Lucy Atkin. I am the Senior Office and HR Consultant at the One Group, and we are a specialist recruiter covering Cambridge, Peterborough and Northampton. Just a bit of housekeeping for all of you, and firstly I hope that you can all hear me, so do let us know if you can't. So we have muted everybody and everyone's videos, cameras should be turned off, so just to prevent any kind of babies crying, dogs barking, postman knocking type stuff. As some of you may know, we've hosted a fair few webinars over the past few months, covering various topics. So we've been covering kind of mental health, motivating employees, furlough, advice on remote working, homeschooling, and all of the challenges that have come with this pandemic. So we've had a lot of different experiences. Everyone's had different experiences of this past few months, whether it's a change to the way we work, whether we've been furloughed, whether we've unfortunately lost our roles. So it seemed like a good time to host a webinar on wellbeing. So over the past few months and over the past couple of weeks, I've been speaking with HR professionals about discussing the impact of COVID and the importance of wellbeing in the workplace. And it was a conversation with Anna Triggs, who I'm going to pass you over to, who's the HR manager at Mundipharma shortly, talking about this topic and how important it is. So it's all surrounding how we can communicate with our colleagues and peers in a way that is effective and engaging and ultimately supporting their well-being. So Anna will shortly discuss the concept behind this and how she engaged and collaborated with Paul from Everymind at work to create the technology to successfully deliver it. So we'll then be hearing from James Kidd, who has kindly offered his time from Mills and Reeve, who's an employment partner, who will discuss the latest guidance for companies who are opening their offices for workers. So you'll have the opportunity throughout this webinar to ask questions. So the speakers will try and answer throughout, but really there will be a Q&A session at the end of the session. So you'll have some chance to kind of answer some further questions then. If we don't have time to answer all of your questions, please don't worry, we will get back to you in due course on those. But without further ado, I will hand you over to Anna.
Thanks, Lucy. Just checking you can hear me?
Yes, hear you.
Perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. So my name is Anna Triggs. I work for Mundipharma. Mundipharma is a global pharmaceutical company. In Cambridge, we're better known as NAP or BARD. And I've been with the business now just coming up to 10 years, very much in HR generalist roles, but more recently, over the past 18 months, had a greater opportunity to get involved in some wellbeing initiatives. One of those initiatives was about the introduction of actually a wellbeing team for our group of employees, which commenced about a year ago. I must stress I'm no specialist in wellbeing, and nor are the people that make up that team. But what we do have in common is that we're incredibly passionate about looking at well-being and really recognising that when people feel at their best, they perform at their best. And it's been a great opportunity to work with that team, because not only have we been able to leverage the power of the campus, we've been able to re-educate our employees on the different benefits that we have. And we've also been able to introduce some new initiatives into Mundipharma. And really my next couple of slides then are just going to be sharing with you the journey that Mundipharma and myself took. We didn't get it perfect, that's for sure. We've learned a huge amount about us as an organisation and how quickly we've been able to adapt since we went into lockdown. Thank you. So what I wanted to ask you all to do is just cast your minds back to start off with to the 23rd of March, when Boris Johnson took the stage and decided to put the nation into lockdown. And I certainly sat there watching the news thinking, wow, how are we going to cope? How as a business will we respond to this? What will we do? And then very quickly it dawned on me that I was about to become a full-time working mother with the need to educate my daughter, and panic really did set in at that point, I think, for me. And I think today we're still learning, aren't we, about the impact of that lockdown and where we are with COVID. So externally, we've got companies closing, unemployment rates rocketing. It's an incredibly scary time for many. And I also read yesterday within an article that during lockdown, 2.1 million people missed their cancer screening appointments, which kind of shocked me and made me think, what will that mean for the future of physical health for individuals? But what we did as a business in response to that lockdown was immediately set up a Mundipharma COVID steering group. And that was led by HR, and we had different parties that joined us as part of that group. So we had health and safety, our facilities management team, IT, occupational health, and so on. But we quickly came together to sit down and make an understanding of what lockdown meant for us and Mundipharma. And really the 4 key areas that we decided to focus on quickly were communication. So all of a sudden we'd lost the office environment, the ability to cross paths and have a quick conversation. So it was really important that we engaged with our people and we understood how we would effectively communicate to them. Our home setup, so half of our business would then be permanently based from home potentially. So we wanted to ensure that they had a good, adequate setup at home that enabled them to carry on with their roles. Business continuity was clearly incredibly important. Half of our UK employees actually work for Bard, which is our manufacturing plant, and therefore we had to support the business in understanding how it would cope with increased absence levels, how we'd ensure our people still attended the workplace and felt comfortable and confident. And finally, of course, wellbeing. So I think it didn't matter who you were or what your situation was, wellbeing had the potential to be challenged over this period of time. So we wanted to make sure we gave adequate attention to that as well. Moving on to the next slide. What was really important for us then, as I mentioned before, was communication and making sure we had the right strategy. And we very much based this around reassurance and guidance for our employees. And we really use the ethos that's captured in the quote below, that the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place. So for us, it was about ensuring communication was regular, it was consistent, and it was continuous. And a lot of it to start off with was trying to help employees understand the government advice that was being given and how we were responding to that as a business. We needed to connect virtually like many others. So our fantastic IT team helped everybody ensure that they had the correct team set up, that we were able to support with development and education and using Teams. And to date, we all still continue to develop in that area and become more proficient at using it. We wanted to recreate some of the office environment online. And so we very much encouraged teams also for social interaction, so where people could set up meetings to come together and have a coffee and a chat. And I think very quickly many of our teams adapted to some evening entertainment in the way of cheese and wine tasting, cinema nights and so on. So we just kept that buzz going. What we did start to recognise though quickly was that, of course, email traffic really increased and we had the potential to hit email fatigue. And so we were keen to make sure we explored alternative platforms and ways of working to ensure effective communication with our people. So our first point of call was developing our intranet site, Mundi Connect, and making sure that we used that to provide the information we were doing so by emails and also further information and detail where we could. And one area that I worked on extensively was our Wellbeing page. And our Wellbeing page was there to offer lots of information to people depending on their circumstances. So by way of example, we had a finance area. So for people that maybe were facing financial challenge, had partners on furlough, losing roles, self-employed, and we were able to partner really well with some of our current benefit providers who helped us with some of that financial advice. We had things such as social pages. This is where we could bring people together, such as parents who could share activities that their schools were sharing with them, where we could share ideas on how we were going to keep our children entertained for such a period of time. And we had the luxury of a school ambassador work with us really closely on that as well to provide and share lots of different material. We introduced Yammer to the business, and again, this was a way for people to connect. In particular where they had similar circumstances. So we had a page in which recognised that some people were at home on their own in lockdown, so they could connect with others and talk with others. So communication was definitely our #1 priority in thinking about how we overcame the challenges of not seeing one another day to day. We ensured that people had a good home setup. So again, our fantastic IT team helped everybody ensure that they could collect computers, screens, laptops, keyboards. But what we also quickly did was we reprioritised our budgets. So where we had travel expenditure that we didn't believe we were going to need to use anymore, we were able to change that into helping people purchase things such as specialist equipment for the home environment. And we carried on encouraging daily team huddles, functional meetings. We got really flexible, so we recognised everybody's circumstances were different. So we played around with working hours, the different days in which they worked. And we allowed people to really experiment through that time. We held lots of wellbeing workshops, which I will touch on shortly. And the other opportunity that we decided to take full advantage of was to support World Wellbeing Day on the 12th of June. And this is where we dedicated an entire day to our global workforce to down tools and really focus on themselves and wellbeing. Moving on, you'll get the theme throughout my slides, which is communicate, communicate, and don't stop communicating. But of course, after we all started to settle down and we found our rhythm and our pattern, what we were really keen to do was then make sure that communication became two-way. So we started delivering pulse surveys to the business. And pulse surveys were never more than 10 questions, and they would be focused on a particular topic such as engagement, learning and development, well-being, what we were learning. And we would ask our employees to respond to these because we really wanted them to be part of shaping our future. And we were getting a wealth of information back, really high response rates, which was fantastic. And it was clear we were learning so much about best practice ways of working, and that our employees were seeing this as the possibility of our future. But we also started to recognise work-life balance was tough, stress and anxiety was increasing, and certainly personal development felt like it had gone on hold. I think we were all spending our lives just sitting in back-to-back team meetings with one another. So again, we needed to pause and think about what could we do in trying to respond to some of these. So one of our initiatives was about looking at annual leave and understanding the use of annual leave. So we had seen through the summer period, many employees had cancelled their holidays because of course they couldn't go anywhere. But we were concerned and worried people hadn't recognised that they still needed to take a break. So we ran a scheme which was all about taking a break, finding an opportunity to hit the pause button, to relax, to wind down. And where possible, where we could see people hadn't maybe taken a break for at least 3 months, we'd really try and target some individuals to talk to them about the thought process of taking some holiday. And we provided a lot further guidance on experimenting with working hours. We didn't want anyone to be restricted to what they felt their contract was. We wanted people to try new and different things. We had some people that travelled to their home countries because they wanted to be with family, and they continued to work from there to date. And by way of example, the weeks were tough certainly for me, and having a 7-year-old that was incredibly demanding. So I started to experiment with things like not working a day in the week and working a weekend day instead, just to help the family at home. But we encouraged everything and for people to try, and we really sought feedback through that to understand what had worked well and not. Then in response really to the growing concern around how people were feeling, the worry associated with COVID, whether they would be returning to jobs, it really felt important at this time that we gave a strong focus and attention to mental well-being. And that's when I got in touch with Paul, that we had worked with in the past. And Paul was in a place of where he was looking to launch an application called Everymind. And I remember reading the caption, which was mental health support in your pocket. And I don't want to steal Paul's thunder, but this was a great opportunity for us to collaborate with Everymind and launch a mental health application. And what this really allowed us to do was help people have access to material that was relevant to their mental health. But it's also a fabulous application in that you can use it as a platform to upload company information. So we all of a sudden had one central point that we could share policy and processes. We could share our benefit provisions and contact points. We could share with people where their mental health first aiders were in the business, where occupational health were. And at the click of a button on your phone, you had access to all of that information. I won't talk any more about Everymind because Paul we'll have the opportunity to speak in more, but it was a fantastic application and it was incredibly well received by our business, and with some areas having up to a 90% uptake in use of that application within the first few weeks. You could move on to you. So really, the last points that I wanted to be able to share with you were that, you know, we continue to communicate and learn as a business. We are all currently still based from home. Our offices remain closed. And that's on the basis that it has been incredibly successful for us as a business. It is what our employees are seeking in the future, but it's also given us an opportunity to consolidate some of our office space. So we've now learned, and we do very well, virtual departmental meetings, functional meetings, and only yesterday was I part of an actual global town hall, which was great. In terms of learning and development, we've been able to move all of our workshops online. And we've taken a bit of a new approach with learning online as well, in that we typically now only offer bite-sized opportunities, so anything from about an hour and a half up to 2 hours. Because again, we understand and recognise people spend an awful lot of time sat at their laptops and don't always have the availability now to sit on a workshop for 3 to 4 hours. You'll see to the right, we invested in a learning platform also called Mindset. And Mindset is very much a digital coaching tool in which individuals can use in their own time when they feel they have the opportunity to do so. But it's all very much based around modules associated with mindset and well-being. And the idea is you pick up a module such as resilience, you answer a couple of questions and it will give you feedback in response to how your resilience might be perceived. And then it provides you some coaching exercises, some tools and techniques about how you might want to think about resilience. But Mindset were brilliant to work with again through lockdown because they added to their modules and they introduced elements such as well-being and thriving in isolation. We've done many a workshop online with our employees, and where we've really had benefit here is where we've ran wellbeing workshops. So an example being talking about cancer awareness. We've had incredibly brave and courageous employees come forward who've talked about their own journey in battling things such as cancer, and that's really connected with our people, that we have those that will share their journey, and we've continued in that manner. So we've had employees talk about managing diabetes, the challenges of depression and anxiety, and bringing it to life has been really well received. We've had lots of other opportunities, and I could imagine many of you might be sat there thinking that's great, but we don't have the budget to be able to support these types of activities. But I can't stress enough how much free material is out there for you to be able to access and use. So by way of example, we've promoted everything from free online yoga sessions. There's the Couch to 5K app. There was a 10 days of happiness challenge that we took part in. So I'd encourage you to go out there and seek to understand what is free, what you can promote internally within your business, where you can challenge your people and your business in taking part in some of these activities. It's also a really useful initiative to have a look at your current benefit providers and speak with them about what they offer. Again, during lockdown, it was like we all came at this together and they offered us lots of opportunities to work with them, delivering free workshops or providing supporting material. As a business, we decided to continue with our global walking challenge through the month of August, and our entire global workforce took part in that. I think it was the Canadian team that won with their average 30,000 steps a day. But again, it was great that we all took that opportunity during the month of August. We also have things such as a pop-up desk area, so we recognise working from home is not for everybody and that there are challenges that come with that. So we do have an area currently located within our business that people can use in the office environment. So in summary, I hope I've shared some ideas and thinking with you. We certainly continue to learn as a business. We continue to make communication our #1 priority, and we certainly don't want to go backwards. We want to be able to look forwards and carry on embracing the flexibility that we've been able to introduce as a business that supports and helps everybody on their journey. So moving on to the next slide, I'm going to hand over to Paul at this point, and he will have the opportunity to share with you how Mundipharma and himself and his business collaborated together to launch the Everymind app. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Anna. So I don't know how I follow that. So if I just quickly explain, obviously, a little bit about what led to me starting Everymind, and then I can obviously walk you through the platform and the approach that we took. with Anna and Mundipharma. And even though I'm stuck in my lounge currently, this is kind of me pre-COVID. And really what, the way that I kind of explain what I do is it's campaigning for mental health. It's sharing my own personal story in the hope that other people might feel like they can talk about mental health as well. Even though awareness is increasing, even though, stigma is slowly starting to be eradicated, let's be honest, the stigma, does still exist, and people do still struggle to talk about mental health. So really what I try and do is, whether that's public speaking or whether that's going into an organization and doing a talk or doing a workshop, whether that's Everymind and the kind of purpose behind that, it's all about trying to help people that might be struggling with mental health. And before I talk about the app, the reason why I started the, Everymind, and the reason why I do this work is just because of personal experience. Very sadly, we haven't got time for me to share my whole story today. But very sadly, I lost my dad to suicide when I was 18, and it was a very sort of out of the blue suicide. I'd never have expected it to happen to him or to us. And, the way that I dealt with my mental health back then was by not dealing with it. And I think a lot of people can kind of relate to that. And it took me a long, long time to kind of get there. I would say 6 or 7 years of therapy and focusing on myself and trying to understand mental health before I got to a point where, a couple of years ago, I started to openly share that story in the hope of helping others. And that led me into the workplace. That led me into companies like Lloyd's TSB, Warner Brothers, did some work with the FA and other organizations, smaller organizations as well. And every time I left those companies, I could be talking to maybe 50 employees or 100 employees or 20 employees. I'd always leave and see that personal experience resonated with employees. That human part of mental health allowed other employees to feel safe to start talking about maybe what they'd been through. So even when Anna had said then about employees stepping forward and talking about their own experiences with cancer, that for me really is a good way of looking at how can we tackle the stigma in the workplace, encouraging employees, empowering employees to share their stories. And I would leave these offices, I would leave these organizations and think to myself, I know I'm not coming back ever again, right? Because for a lot of organizations, I will come in on Mental Health Awareness Week or World Mental Health Day, or I would come in at once and I wouldn't be coming in again. And I thought to myself, how can we scale this? How can we reach, instead of just 50 employees, how do we reach the whole of Mundipharma? How can we, reach other employees that might be struggling? So the idea of Everymind came around then, and it's been sort of 2.5 years of developing the platform. And really, if I walk you through some of the main features, hopefully you'll kind of see where that kind of arises from. So if we just go to the next slide, one of the key things that we focus on is this proactive approach. When it comes to mental health, let's be honest, we're still very reactive. And the way that I say that is, for a lot of organizations, they ignore mental health. Let's ignore mental health. We don't have a mental health problem. No one's talking about it. And then they react when something has happened, when maybe an employee is in despair, or maybe an employee is at crisis point and they're struggling. Then we're going to react and we have to do something about it. Even if we look at employee assistance programs, we can even argue that mental health first aid could be very reactive. Until you're struggling, then go and access this support. So we were looking at more proactive ways of approaching it. And to be honest as well, even the way that we focus on our own mental health is very reactive. I was taught from a very young age, as I always share, drink plenty of water, eat an apple a day to keep the doctor away, exercise a lot, eat healthy, because if I don't, I'm going to become physically unwell. I was taught from a very young age with mental health, ignore it, don't do anything about it unless you have to. And really what we're trying to do is look at this proactive approach of trying to encourage employees to manage their mental health on a daily basis and know that it's not weak to do so as well. So if we go to the next slide, what really came of that is, as Anna said, mental health support in your employees' pockets whenever they need it. We did a lot of research and also found that, employees were struggling to find the support that you already offered. It could be like hidden away on the internet. And a lot of the times as well, when it comes to mental health, employees want to remain anonymous. They don't want to be sat in an office on their desktop computer with an article about how to manage depression, because they're fearful of the judgments that come with that. So really, we thought about creating this app that embedded a lot of our approach of this proactive support, but also making it anonymous and safe for your employees as well. So the next slide just kind of shows a couple of the main features. So we've got the feed, which is, again, what we really focus on in terms of educating your employees. One of the biggest challenges with mental health is the lack of education we have around it. I did not know how to support my dad when he had depression. It was a short period, only 6 months of him struggling with depression, but we didn't know what to do because you're not educated on it. You know, we wasn't given a manual of this is how you help your dad. At the same time, I don't think my dad was educated enough to understand how he could deal with what he was going through. And a lot of the misconceptions around mental health comes from this lack of education. So what we do with the feed is we add content on a weekly basis, content that's either personal experiences or coping strategies, or as we've kind of got on the example on the right, different topics and that we're always looking at, and we're adding more content to it on a weekly basis that's there for your employees to obviously see. Also, the content within the feed is tailored to each individual employee. So we find out a little bit about them through some questions. We have a new feature called the Everymind Scores feature, and we're always trying to tailor it to every individual because mental health is so individual. And then if we go to the next slide, the app also is customized for every business. So what we did with Mundipharma in particular is Mundipharma obviously had different divisions. I guess that's what you could call it, Anna. And what we did is we created a separate company ID for each individual one. So that then allowed Anna to put specific company policies or company support for maybe the manufacturing department, but also something very different for another part of the organization as well. So again, it's not a one size fits all approach. What we do with every business is set them up their own version of the app, their own company ID, and then we can embed their existing support options, whether that's an employee assistance program, the list of your mental health first aiders. Again, Mundipharma provided us with some of their policies and some of their support options for their employees. So now if I'm an employee of Mundipharma, I can just pick up my phone, go into the Everymind app and find out what company support is on offer when it comes to mental well-being. So we're looking to provide that tailored sort of service to each business, and at the same time 24/7 support. Within a couple of clicks, an employee could be texting someone or calling someone for that helping hand as well. And the next slide is something we focused on for a long time: easy sign up. The engagement for Mundipharma was really, really good. And again, we were surprised by that. We're now partnered with just over 100 businesses since March, and the engagement for Mundipharma was very, very good. And now I know why, because you see the amount of stuff that Anna has done during this time. It's led to this almost, people now feel safer to maybe engage in a mental wellbeing app. But the simple sign up was something that we focused on. So every employee goes to the app store, downloads the app to their phone, adds in their company ID that's provided by the organization, adds in their work email address, sets themselves a password, and then they're in. We're trying to get sign up down to as quick as possible for employees, because we all know that if you make it a long-winded process, employees aren't going to be signing up to it at all. And then finally, if we move to the next slide, it's personal for every employee. We have a feature in there, as I say, called the Everymind Scores, which allows employees to manage their anxiety, depression, at the same time look at their lifestyle, their sleep, also at the same time look at their community, their relationships. You might be able to see it here on webcam. As an employee, I can come in and track every individual area. But what we then do as a technology is we then suggest content for each individual employee. So if I'm struggling with self-belief, based upon the answers that I've given, the app will then suggest some content to that individual in terms of what they can do to improve that area of mental health as well. And then again, if we just skip to the next slide, it's that tailored support that we're trying to offer. There's still a real focus on a one-size-fits-all approach for mental health. One-size-fits-all approach does not exist. Mental health is so individual. And again, what we're trying to do as a technology is provide that tailored support. So if you want to find out a little bit more about it, and again, it was amazing to partner with Mundipharma as they were one of our first clients as well, one of our first big clients. So to partner with them was great, and to see the results that they've got. If you just go to the next slide quickly, there's a link there if you want to find out a little bit more about that. We do a 3-month trial. I'll pick up that email. I'm happy to do a little demo for it in a little bit more detail. It's just everymindatwork.com/inquire. And then finally, if we could just go to the next slide, and I want to bring Anna back in if you don't mind. One thing that I've realized from speaking to HR professionals over the last 6 months is a lot of them set themselves on fire to keep others warm. And what that is in terms of, I think we all do it, right? We don't prioritize our mental health. We put a lot of other people in front of us. We put work in front of us, our to-do list in front of us, and it doesn't become natural to focus on ourselves. And even me saying this doesn't sit easy, but I think we need to realize self-care is a priority. Self-care is not a luxury. What do we do on a daily basis to look after ourselves? So as a HR professional, Anna, what have you done during lockdown to make sure that you have looked after yourself?
Yeah, no, thanks, Paul. I was thinking about this when I knew you were going to think that question. I thought, gosh, what did I do? But no, I think I recognised very quickly into lockdown that I would describe myself as a giver. So I was putting everybody else first, ensuring our employees were best supported as we could be. And it was probably a couple of weeks in where I realised actually I was doing myself no favours at all. And that if I didn't hit the pause button, I was going to burn out. So I had to take the break, as we were encouraging all our other employees to do, and I took some holiday. I started to play around with things like my working pattern. But I really started to recognise at that moment in time that I needed to put me first and my family first as well. And so work had to become number two, unfortunately. But it was the right thing to do at that time. And I think self-care is so incredibly important, in particular in the field of HR, that you have to put yourself sometimes as number one, take care of your own well-being, ensure, you know, areas such as resilience and support are there for you. And I was just reflecting a little bit more last night, and I thought actually it's a bit like the advice you get when you go on a plane, if anyone can remember what that was like. But it's that piece of advice they say that, you know, if the masks drop from the ceiling, put your own on first before you help anybody else. And I thought actually that's really true, and that's probably the way to think about it.
Yeah, and just quickly, one more thing that I'd like to add to that as well is also, as Anna's pointed out, well-being and mental well-being is a huge task for anyone. And one thing that I disagree with is asking a HR professional to add it to their existing job description when you've got so much more to do. So one of the things that we're trying to do as a business is give you that helping hand in terms of let us do a lot of the work for you. And one of the things that we did with Mundipharma as well is provide Anna with analytics, anonymous analytics on each organization in terms of what they might be struggling at, what content they're looking at, what searches they're doing anonymously. So then obviously the efforts can be tailored. And I think it is that helping hand, even though it might seem overwhelming, the amount of stuff Mundipharma has done and Anna has done, it is sometimes asking for that helping hand as well, because you've got your typical day job to do as well as trying to improve mental health in the workplace. So I think it's important that HR professionals do lean on others as well to give them that extra help as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Paul and Anna, for that. That's so interesting. It's so insightful. And I think it's given a lot of people something to really think about. You know, I think this pandemic is really, especially during this kind of time, it's kind of really taught us to think about what's important and how self-care is so important. So you've highlighted some really, really good points there. So I definitely think it's something that people are going to benefit from. So thank you so much for that.
Nice.
So without further ado, I will hand you over to James from Mills and Reeve. Over to you.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Paul. Wow, Mundipharma sounds like a great place to work, and partnering with Everymind sounds really brilliant. So, slight change of tone. I'm going to be talking to you about what's the current situation with should we be working in the office, should we be working from home? As you can see, I'm not at home today. This isn't a very Spartan loft thing that I'm working in, and I do have, I think, a webinar going on in the room next to me with paper thin walls, so if you can hear a bit of bleed, I apologise. That's some of the perils of going back into the office. So I'm an employment partner at Mills and Reeve, and so Tia can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk to you about the latest guidance we have here. So specifically, I'm only going to talk about England. You'll know about the different situations going on in Ireland and Scotland and Wales. But Boris has given various announcements. So I'm going to take you back to, and I did love, Anna, your picture of the Earth wrapped in chains. That was very evocative. So I think 16th of March, the message was very much work from home if you possibly can. 1st of August, we then get, actually, let's get everyone back to the office. Of course, we all do lots of planning. We will think about how many people we can get back in our workplaces. And as an aside, wasn't it very frustrating that all the messages were, let's get people back to work? No. The majority of us have been working at that point for many, many months. It wasn't back to work, it was back to the workplace. Sorry, it's a hill on which I might die on, but there we are. So we looked at that and said, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do 2 meter social distancing? How much sanitizing can we buy in? All that sort of stuff. But we then get to September and a slight U-turn. And I'll read you the specific guidance. So that they say, to help contain the virus, office workers who can work effectively, my emphasis, from home, should do so over the winter. Where an employer, in consultation with their employee, judges an employee carry out their normal, I emphasis, duties from home, they should do so. So we're going to be exploring that over the next few minutes. Now, obviously that all may change again, and I'm not really going to be touching on what happens with the different tiers and things like that today. But let's get some interaction. So I'm going to give you some various polls. So the first poll is going to be just after that announcement on the 22nd of September. Did you talk to your staff? Please let me know. So Mundipharma went out and did lots of pulse surveys. I'm hoping, by the way, there's nobody answers why would I do that? And currently you're living up to my expectations. So 60%, I'll give you a couple more seconds, have you voted? We've done pulse surveys much like Mundipharma, great way of understanding what else is going on. So, okay, 73% of you voted. I'm going to end that and then share the results. So isn't that interesting that the vast majority, 68%, have asked staff what they want in terms of going back to the workplace or not, but 33% haven't. Now, it could be that you've interpreted the guidance in a particular way, and we'll explore that in a moment. I'm very pleased it was 0% on why I would do that. Okay, so let's go to our second poll. If you have asked, what did people say? Did they say, I want to mostly work from home? Lawyers abbreviate everything, so WFO is obviously working from the office. I say office, workplace, you know what I mean. Yes. And or did they say, I want to have the most flexibility, please, thank you very much? I'm obviously talking here about those people who have the ability to either work from home or work from the workplace rather than somebody who's a machine operator or somebody on a production line. Okay, we're at nearly 60% of you have voted. I'll give you a couple more seconds. Okay, I think that's it. Share the results. So yeah, I could have predicted that most people are saying, you know what, we're living in a new world order. It's I hate the phrase, I'm sure you do too, Anna, see, the new normal. I'll be sick. What is the new normal? Who knows what the new normal is? Thank you, Anna. So last poll from me, and then I'll get on with talking to you. So what have you done? Staff. Have you told everyone to work from home again, in accordance with what Boris talked about? Have you disregarded the announcement and continued with everybody back in? Or have you come up with a cunning plan, Baldrick, between working from home and working from the office? If I can't get a Blackadder reference in before 11 o'clock, I've failed, I think. I got a knowing smile from Anna. I'm not sure Paul got that reference. But, okay, 65% of you have voted. I'm going to end that and share those results. So yes, interestingly, so a lot of you, 40%, everybody go back to working from home. Interestingly, some of you have disregarded and carried on. I think that's of 6. We've got about 116 people, 3%, somebody do the maths. So that means, yeah, less than 5 people have said, right, actually, we're going to carry on. But the majority, 50%, come up with a cunning plan. Okay, next slide, please, Tia. So what are we talking about here? It seems to me that we've got to, there's a balancing exercise here, isn't it? This is all about, yes, of course, if our workplace is COVID secure, in theory, everybody should be able to come back to work, but it can't be everybody because you've got to have 2-meter distancing. So you're looking at probably somewhere between 35-40%, which is what our offices are in terms of the maximum number of people you can have in at one time and the whole one-way systems, all that sort of stuff. But let's just drill down into what that government guidance says. So this is not law. This is the guidance that we've got. Now, I think we have to be slightly careful here. we're going into another 6 months. This is all about well-being. The guidance doesn't mention well-being. Only in response to a question in the Commons did the Prime Minister say, well, if it's going to negatively affect, I'm paraphrasing, but if it's going to negatively affect someone's well-being, then of course they should return to the workplace. So it's interesting that doesn't feature in the guidance. So the two bits that I emphasised in the guidance were effective and normal. So when is it safe, should we say, to say to people, yes, you can still work from the workplace or work from the office? Well, it seems to me that we've got a number of reasons up on the slide. We've got productivity, training, home circumstances, psychological needs. So you've got junior people that are just coming on. Do they need development? Do they need supervision? I think it's very difficult for certain roles, certain types of people to work effectively from home and do their job. They could probably do some of it, but that will negatively impact on other things. But can they do the whole range? I don't think so. So one of the things that we've said is for junior people who are in junior roles that are just coming into the firm or just starting their training, actually we're suggesting that they come into the office a number of days a week, and then we make sure that there are more senior people around so that they pick up that intangible hubbub, that level of supervision, that ability to have a conversation. So one of the things that I think that is incredibly isolating, I'd be interested if anybody else has picked up on this, is that isolation that you pick up when you're at home, and that reluctance on some people's point to ring somebody, or I'm going to intrude. I don't want to do that. Whereas, of course, if you're in the office, it's very easy, isn't it, to say to Fred or Ginger, oh, can I just have a quick word? And it's done. And so for people who are less confident or less certain or secure, that they are unable or unwilling to do that. So we've thought about, well, should you have some sort of video conferencing or video system just there in the background so you are endlessly connected? Now, I think there's pros and cons with that. People may see, whoa, Big Brother is watching, and I've heard some of the horrendous stories about the surveillance, covert or not, that some employers are putting in to check their employees are being productive. Well, hey, should it be about output rather than just being sitting at your desk? Well, maybe it depends on the workplace. But I think the key thing from this, and I'll stop waffling on, is about, I don't think we should be seen as exploiting the situation. I think we should be seen as looking after our people. For some people, it's very clear that it's not good for them, and conversely not good for the business, for them to be working from home. For some people, they can't carry out their job effectively, or they can't carry out their normal duties. For the majority of us, we could carry out probably some or all, or maybe some or the majority of our duties, but we probably couldn't do the whole range. So I think it's incredibly important that A, you assess it, and B, you look at the psychological needs and make provision for that. So I was on a CVI webinar a couple of weeks ago, and this lady had the 3 E's, which I thought was incredibly powerful. So back in August, when we were planning to have a return to the workplace, she said they'd gone from enable to encourage, but the third E, enforce, was there in the background. And I think that post our late September announcement, we're back somewhere between enable and encourage. So we're enabling people to come in if they want to. Some people need to, and we're encouraging some people to do so because, again, they may need to. And to be fair, the business may benefit as well. But it's getting that balance right. Next slide, please, Tia. Looking forwards, we're at this for the next 6 months, aren't we? And I think that at the end of the day, you've got to talk to the staff, you've got to talk to people and say, well, what is it you want to achieve? A lot of people I hear are wary. And what they're wary of is, well, everybody's going to work from home. That means that everybody will want to work from home going forward, and we're going to be deluged with flexible working applications, and we're going to struggle to resist them come when we got a vaccine or when things have calmed down. I'm not sure about that. I'm not convinced about that. I think for a lot of people, working from home and having a mix, and as we can see, there is a balance there, is absolutely what's going to happen. I don't think we're going to spring back to just everybody going back to what we were doing pre-March. that seems unrealistic to me. So we need to be thinking about actually a greater proportion of home working, as Anna was talking about. Maybe we realise some real estate, maybe we make those savings, maybe we put those savings into more things we can do to make things better for our employees, so that the home setup is much better, and I'll come to that in a second. I think we're going to a balance on flexible working requests. If you are getting them, I think you shouldn't be doing them on a first come, first serve basis. I think you need to set a timescale and say, okay, we're going to consider all of these in this timescale and then make some decisions, bearing in mind where we are. And obviously things are changing in the world and in our country and in our areas. So you need to be flexible. So people need to understand that. Next slide, please, Tia. So we've touched on a lot of this. A lot of people are suffering. I'm on too many Zoom calls where I've got people in bedrooms, people on dressing tables, and they lack that separation between work and home. Obviously, we've got some people are in lockdown and can't go into the office anyway. I think we have to be more open to thinking actually somebody who is not visible in the workplace isn't working effectively. We have to change that mindset. And I suspect the vast majority of the people who are on this webinar are going, James, we know all this already, shut up. So apologies if I'm preaching to the converted. I think it's for us to be able to go to the managers in the businesses and train some of those, forgive me, dinosaurs who up pre-March were anti people working from home because they didn't have that trust. I think we've hopefully broken that. And we've got people who can see the working from home is really working for many people. And it's just, we'll need to embrace all of that. Tia, please. So in terms of some particular points, it's interesting that Anna's talking about what Mundipharma is saying. Well, let's invest some of the money that we're saving from travel expenses into people's home setup. I fervently believe that if your setup is, I won't swear, is rubbish at home, that has a massive negative psychological impact. Whereas if you are comfortable in your setup and it's all ergonomic and it all works, it provides that positive lift. Maybe it doesn't, and that reduces it each day, but it's got to be right. So from a legal perspective, the employer has to provide the kit that the employee is using, so screens, keyboards, laptops, whatever it might be. They don't have to provide the desk and the chair. But boy, surely people's productivity, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted, people's productivity will go up if they are more comfortable. So whether they take the chairs from the office, whether you say, actually, we will either pay for or contribute to the cost of some of that. The legal bit is if the person has a disability, then yes, you should be paying for some of that, not office equipment, but office furniture. But I quite like what Anna's talking about in that respect. I think we've touched on health and safety, supervision, psychological support. You don't need me as an employment lawyer to say to you as HR folk, these are incredibly important things that we have to think about for our staff, and taking the pulse surveys that Anna was talking about, talking to organisations like Everymind, because at the end of the day, if we get this wrong, we won't have a business, will we, come spring. And if we really get it wrong, although I think perhaps people are reluctant to move around at the moment. People are going to have to accept at some stage that if you get your messaging wrong and you're not creating an organisation that really cares for employees and walks the walk and doesn't just talk the talk, people are going to vote with their feet, because they can say, well, I can work from home for you, but it's rubbish. But actually, I can work from home for this organisation. And hey, look at these amazing policies and all the support that they can actually provide. And people, I think, we'll go through a period of reevaluation where people go, actually, that won't work. And maybe it's tongue-in-cheek to say on the slide, do we need a head of remote? Well, we've got various heads of happiness, haven't we? And such roles. There might be someone on the webinar, but at the end of the day, we need people to take charge of this. And HR, as Paul was talking about, have a huge amount to do already. And can you then shoulder this burden as well? Okay, I think that that's probably me, and I'll hand back to Lucy. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James. Again, it's really interesting to hear people's opinions of, you know, what the new normal looks like and working from home and working in the office, and everyone's got just very different kind of opinions and experience of it, really. So very interesting. So thank you so much to James, Anna and Paul again for your time. Really appreciate it. We are going to be opening up the Q&A session shortly. I've seen some questions are coming through, which is great. But just before we do, we're actually going to be running a poll of various topics that we're considering running on webinars over the next couple of months. So hopefully, Tia, if you could just put on our screen now, we'll have the opportunity to choose your kind of preferred topic. A lot of these ideas are coming from you, so we'd welcome your thoughts on it. And if there are any others that aren't on there, please email them through to us so we can kind of get back to you, because we really want to run as many webinars and topics, relevant topics as possible. So do keep those coming through. But we will open the Q&A session now, if okay, and start answering some of those questions, if that's okay, guys. So what have we got on here?
Did I leave the poll results up for the rest of my talk and therefore obscured the slides? If I did, I apologise, everyone.
I don't think so. Yeah, I'll give everybody a few seconds just to have a look at that poll and just kind of you know, register your interest on those. It would be good to say, actually, we are going to be running a diversity and inclusion webinar on the 18th of November. So some further information will come out about that probably in the next couple of weeks. So basically going to be talking about how they addressed a gender imbalance within their manufacturing facility, how they were quite a heavily male dominated organization, and you know, since they've implemented certain things, it's become all 50-50. But they will be a webinar on that on the 18th, and there's another one that will be with Weetabix, which is dates yet to be announced for that one. So that will all come through. But okay, fantastic. We've had some really good feedback here. Diversity inclusion is definitely a topic that a lot of people are wanting to talk about. I think in many of my conversations I've had recently, that's been probably top of the list. But if there are any other bits and pieces that you can think of, do send them through. I know that Brexit's going to, again, start rising to the top of the list pretty soon. So it's something that we are going to be kind of talking about soon. So any questions that we can answer, Anna, Paul or James, that have come through?
Yeah, there's a couple on platforms to use for regular pulse surveys. So we used a very simple and easy SurveyMonkey, which again allows you to circulate questions to people and pull that data back together, and it summarises it all for you. So that's been really useful. But I know companies such as Corn Ferry that we've used in the past also allow you to purchase a platform which will do very similar results. So there's plenty out there. I would just make sure whatever survey you or platform you choose to use is one that enables you to analyse the data once you've got response to it.
Vicky, who asks about somebody who is really keen to come back on work on site, but you prefer you to have them continue working from home. Yes, there is a risk, but I think you can manage it. Why do you need to keep them working from home? If they can work from home effectively, then I think you can say to them that, well, the current guidance is this, and we prefer you to do that. I'd be exploring why they are so keen to come back, and if there is a psychological element to that or a well-being element to that, then to deny that, I think you need good reasons to deny that. So I think you need to explore a bit further.
I've got one here about the Everymind app. Can employers see all the responses from employees about how they're feeling, or is it confidential to each person? So it's confidential to the employee. We don't track personally what employees are obviously looking at, and we don't provide that to the organization. But what we do is just give the company almost aggregated anonymous analytics. So just kind of high level data in terms of what they're struggling with. But at the same time, there's also a limit. I think at the moment our limit is 50 employees, because obviously for the smaller companies, if we say employees are struggling with grief, they might know who that individual is. So we also limit the in terms of numbers as well.
Yeah, and I probably would add to that for Paul's benefit is if there's a company that might just make things a little bit challenging, it can be Mundipharma. So I think we made Paul jump through 1,000 hoops before we could introduce the application, and it was all related to data privacy and confidentiality. And Paul was able to give that security to our business. He met with our key stakeholders in IT and so on, give that reassurance, and provide us all the policy to ensure that we've ticked all of the boxes from a Mundipharma approach.
Sonia talks about how to deal with the divide between, she calls them key workers and home workers. I think that's so important, but actually quite difficult. So particularly if you've got where there was furlough people on 100%, so you topped up from the 80% to the 100%, and then you've got people at work. So they're working and then getting their normal pay, and these people are sitting at home and getting their normal pay but not doing anything in return. I think that was all very difficult. I think it's slightly easier when you've got key workers who are out there doing stuff, but people are working from home. If they're working from home, they're still working, and it's saying the message that we value everybody. Some people are doing this role because they need to be out there doing these things. But that doesn't mean that we devalue in any way, shape or form the people who are working from home. They just happen to have a different place of work. I think it's easier said than done. I think that as we evolve, and as I was talking about in terms of changing and more people are going to be remote working, you've got to work really hard on the presenteeism. So, and you go to the person who's in the office or workplace with you to ask them that question, and therefore you build up different relationships, don't you, rather than going to the people who are remote working and ensuring that you engage everybody. So it's and all of those Zoom calls that we're all on with the teams when we're working from home, it's great, isn't it? Because everybody is in a single site and the Zoom call works. When you've got people in the office or in the workplace, and you've got 3 or 4 in a room, and then you've got everybody else at home individually, we all know, we've all been in those meetings where you get those glances and you can't quite hear what's going on with those people, with the many people in the room. They are having a meeting themselves as part of their sub-meeting, as part of the bigger meeting. So we at M&R have said, well, if that happens, everybody's in the office logs on individually to try and reduce that feeling of them and us.
It might be worth to quickly add, I've just had a couple of questions about whether we'll receive a copy of the presentation, because I know some people are having to run off to other meetings. There will be, the presentation will be available. We'll send the slides over the next couple of days, and it will also be available on our website. There were a couple of other questions in here. Because I wanted to ask you, Anna, how did you get the buy-in from the senior leadership team to get this kind of approved, this project approved?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work. So we started a year before lockdown in focusing on wellbeing and helping our stakeholders and senior leaders to understand the importance of it. Certainly with the app, I suppose it's never a hard sell when somebody gives you something for free to trial. So that certainly played well for Mundipharma. And as Paul described as well, we've been able to have data returned every 4 weeks on the use of that application. We've also driven out pulse surveys on it. So we've been able to share all that data and show the high usage, the high output, and how it's helped us to shape our agenda for the future in understanding the most looked at areas. But for Mundipharma as well, we've very much taken an approach of we could try and sit and measure all day long, and we could try and strategize around wellbeing. But actually sometimes just getting on with things and doing things and trying things is the best approach. And if we make a difference to one person, then we've done our job. And that really helps, having that mindset.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just trying to think. Sorry, I'm having some issues with my chat box, so I do apologize if I can't see all of the questions. So
I've got one here if you want me to jump in on one.
Perfect, thank you.
Which I thought was good. This is from Sophie. It says, working from home can make it harder for managers to pick up on the signs employees are struggling with their mental health. We encourage video calls, virtual lunches, more frequent one-on-ones and pulse service, but any further advice, guidance for helping managers? I think it's a really, really good point. I've also actually seen more employees and managers being a bit more open with mental health during this time because there's less friction. We all know sometimes in the office environment, it's still quite a silent culture, and talking about mental health in the office is kind of difficult in comparison to maybe me dropping my manager a text or doing it on Zoom. But I think it's a very difficult question to answer because the way that we kind of look at our strategy is looking at 3 pillars of any organization. You've got your promote, your provide, your protect. Promote is very much the awareness raising piece. You can have our app, you can have mental health first aiders, you can have an employee assistance program, but if you don't tackle stigma and start that conversation of mental health, none of your employees are going to feel safe to access that support. So I think with that sort of scenario, Sophie, I would say definitely focus on that communication element that Anna said. How can you encourage more employees to share? How can you encourage managers to look out for their employees as well? But by the sounds of it, you're doing some really good stuff as well. So I would also look at the kind of feedback from those video calls, virtual lunches, the more frequent one-on-ones, pulse surveys, and learn from that as an organization as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. I think we'll probably wrap up there because I'm conscious of time and I know that everyone's got other meetings they need to attend. But if there are any other further questions, you know, do kind of send them through and we will get back to you when we can. But thank you again to all our speakers. Really appreciate you giving up your time for us this morning. And thank you to everybody who has attended the webinar. And yes, we will be sending some further information out over the next day or so. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye, everyone.